at one point, I think this was my first really bad bout of sciatica, and I went to the osteopath. I had a great osteopath there. Nothing was working. Homeopathy wasn't working, and so it started after about a day. It started going down, and then what really made it go away completely is I called my son and we talked about it, and then the pain was gone. And this had been going on the pain had been going on for, like, 2 months.
Welcome to Beyond the Pain, the podcast that explores what it really takes to break free from chronic pain and reclaim your life. I'm your host, Leigh Brandon, and someone who's spent over 2 decades helping people get to the root cause of pain that no one else could explain. Whether you're dealing with long-term back issues, joint pain, nerve discomfort, or mysterious symptoms that just won't go away, this show is here to help you go deeper. Because beyond the pain, there's clarity, strength, and power waiting for you. Each week, we'll uncover the physical, emotional, biochemical, and energetic causes of pain and how to transform them. Let's dive deep into this week's episode. When we experience pain, we naturally assume that something in the painful area must be damaged, inflamed, or structurally out of place. Sometimes that is the case. But what if the pain persists after an injury should have healed, moves around the body, or repeatedly returns despite treatment? My guest for this episode is Amy Lansky, a former computer scientist with a PhD from Stanford University who went on to explore homeopathy, consciousness, and a broader understanding of health and healing. Amy is the author of the book Living in Synchrony, in which she explores how physical, emotional, mental, and energetic influences may affect our health, and how identifying the level at which the problem began may help us find more appropriate support. A significant part of our conversation focuses on Dr. John Sarno's work and the possibility that unresolved emotions and unconscious tension may contribute to persistent pain. Amy shares how exploring an emotionally difficult situation helped her recover from a severe episode of sciatica after physical treatments had failed to resolve it. We also discuss posture, breathing, symptom suppression, migrating pain, and approaches such as meditation, journaling, emotional freedom technique, and trauma release exercises. This is not about suggesting that all pain is emotional or that physical causes should be ignored. It's about looking beyond the location of the symptoms and considering what the whole person may be responding to. Here is my conversation with Amy Lansky. Amy, welcome to Beyond the Pain. Great to have you on the show.
Hi, Leigh. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. I'm really looking forward to this episode. Before we get into it, I just want to share something with you. So, as you know, I've read your book, Living in Synchrony. Now, what's quite interesting, I think it's interesting, I came across your work around the same time as I just started work with a client, and he had lower back pain, and he'd read a book by Dr. John Sarno. And he said to me, "Have you heard of Dr. John Sarno?" I was like, "No, I've not heard of him." And around the same time, I was doing some research looking for guests for the show, and I came across a podcast called the Cure for Chronic Pain podcast. And I just bookmarked it. I didn't look into it or anything. So I watched you on my friend's podcast, Doc Malik, on his health podcast, and it was a really, really great episode. And I enjoyed it so much. I went straight out and bought your book, Living in Synchrony, read it very, very quickly, and I'm a slow reader. But when I really enjoy a book, I do read it quicker. And of course, in your book, you mention Dr. John Sarno. And I started listening to the Cure for Chronic Pain podcast. I've actually listened to the whole of series 4, 30-odd episodes. And she's actually continuing the work of Dr. John Sarno.
Oh.
So your book's called Living in Synchrony, and I thought, wow, there's some synchronicities going on here. And since I read your book, I've actually read 3 of Dr. John Sarno's books as well. within a couple of months, and I'm quite a slow reader, so that's quite good going for me. So there's a lot of synchronicity going on. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation today.
Yeah.
And what I always do to kick things off, if you could share your own journey, which again is, you write so well in this book about your own journey with pain, but also what led you to homeopathy, consciousness research, and also, the books that you've written, but especially living in synchrony. So that's quite a lot there, but just take it in your own pace.
Well, you'll find out I can talk and tell my story. So, well, my journey is so unusual because I started off as a computer scientist in Silicon Valley, one of the few women. I got my PhD at Stanford, which sadly has now become the origin of many of the things that are
Mm,
ruining our society right now. But and I was part of the growth of Silicon Valley in like the 70s, 80s, early 90s. Um, my husband is also a PhD in computer science. And in fact, we were sort of the party house of Silicon Valley. We had bands. I was a singer in a band. My husband was a singer in a band. Anyway, and then we had two kids, and my younger son, Max, who is now 30, I'll be 35 in a month, um, was one of the early autism statistics. So that sent us on this journey that changed our entire life, both of us. So now, so basically, I can tell the story about that, but let's just say I discovered homeopathy, and this practitioner that we went to, we were like one of his first cases. And this was back in 1990, the beginning of 1995, so a long time ago.
mm.
Before people knew about
Uh,
diets and all this stuff,
I
it
had
was,
hair back in those days.
yeah, it was at the beginning of this, like the explosion of autism hadn't happened yet.
Mm.
And so there was,
You mean it wasn't just better diagnosis?
no, like it was still pretty rare. And so,
That's
so
crazy, isn't it? That, oh no, it's not a new thing. We just diagnose better. It's like, okay, so
yeah.
where are all the autistic people my age? Where are
Yeah,
they? Where
right.
are they?
Where were they? My age.
Mm.
Anyways, I'm 70. So
Right.
anyway,
Wow.
so so he like this remedy within a week that the therapists were going, "What did you do?" We didn't tell them. And over the course of a few months, it was clear things were changing. After 9 months, uh, he was the therapist said, "You don't need me anymore." She, in fact, invited us to give a talk at her clinic. At the time we started, he was about 3.5. By the time he was 5, he was released from special education benefits, and it was a process. Autism treatment is difficult, and the cases now are much worse because these kids are
Mm.
assaulted. Much worse. Many
Mm.
more vaccines. I think he was a vaccine injury,
Mm.
an MMR injury from looking at videos and things like that, and the pattern I've learned about the different patterns. So
And
that's
I think now also you've got so much more EMFs and you've got more
yes, yeah.
glyphosate as well,
So I have
which
to say it's not just the vaccines.
mm,
It may be one of the most important factors, but
well,
it's
there's glyphosate in the MMR.
I did not know that.
Mm,
Like, what are they trying to do to us? These poor kids here in the United States, kids get like 70 vaccines in their childhood.
mm.
So so I don't know how any kids survive it now, and they aren't. So anyway, so that set us obviously on a journey. We all started using homeopathy. It became our primary form of medicine. It still is. And and I got involved. I started studying homeopathy. And I did practice a little bit, but I'm more of a researcher and a writer. Um, and so I eventually I wrote my first book, which is my most popular book. It's called Impossible Cure: The Promise of Homeopathy. People can find out everything at my website, which is amylansky.com. So anyway, I got involved in the health freedom movement. In those days, the health freedom movement was about allowing practitioners to practice. That
Mm.
wasn't as much of a problem in the UK, but it was in the United States. And it's a state by state thing. And if you weren't licensed, you could be accused of practicing medicine without a license. So we actually succeeded in California in passing a law that allowed, with stipulations, unlicensed practitioners to practice so alternative medicine. So that was back in like 2001 or 2 when we passed that. Then I was on the board of the National Center for Homeopathy for many years. Anyway, time goes by, and it was actually that book that led to the next step, which we became involved in the other health freedom movement, which was um, really the freedom of us humans to choose the form of medicine we want to use. So, so somebody wrote to me about my book, somebody who was in prison actually for murdering his newborn child.
Mm.
And it turned out he had become a cause celeb. All these alternative people trying to get him out because it was actually led by his wife trying to get him out because it was actually a vaccine injury. So he writes me from prison. I'm getting all these letters and I'm going, what the hell? I don't even open them. Finally, I open one. He says, I read your book. See you guys are computer people. Can you figure out if my kid got a hot lot, which is a bad lot of the vaccine, of a vaccine? And at the time, the CDC VAERS data, which people are more familiar with now,
Mm.
was just a bunch of files on the government website. You could use it, but no human being could really just use it. It wasn't online. It was just like dozens of files. So over a weekend, my husband, who's a true computer wizard, put it all together and found out, yes, this kid had a hot lot. Eventually, the guy could get out of prison. But and then about a year later, he created the first website to search the data. And that propelled us into the next phase of our voyage, which was he called him the grandfather of theirs, the first website before the government created their own. They totally know who he is because even they use his website because it's more complete and easier to use. And now there's much more going on. Just to let you know, I mean, like his website hits used to be 50,000 a day. When COVID began, it was 500,000 a day.
Wow.
And he's now on the board of the National Vaccine Information Center. So that propelled us into the next situation. So, meanwhile, let's back up a little. We're in Silicon Valley, and I've always been interested in various forms of alternative medicine. And over the years, I learned about many more things. I talk in my book about way before homeopathy, I had lower back pain and discovered the work of John Sarno, which became my go-to thing. And we can talk about that thing when
Mm.
little aches, pains, headaches, anything, I go, think the message of John Sarno. So, and I just, and then synchronicity. Okay. I started studying with a meditation teacher. I got really interested in, in that. And then my contacts at Stanford, I got to know Russell Targ, who is sort of the developer of remote viewing, which is seeing at a distance in time and space.
Mm.
And in fact, he worked at the same place I was working, which was SRI, which used to be Stanford Research Institute. In fact, synchronicity. I went out with his daughters, the same guy. We went out with the same guy for a period. um, and we just, at one point, my husband was working at this research place, and Targ was working with this guy there, Dean Radin, who became
Mm-hmm.
he is the chief science officer of the Institute of Noetic Science. He's like the one, like maybe the leading psychic researcher of, scientific researcher of psychic phenomena in the world. And he asked Steve to write the code for some of his experiments. So then we became very knowledgeable about all of that. Um, Eventually, I decided to write my second book, which is called Active Consciousness. I also got really interested in manifestation, how it might work. So that's what my second book is about. And it's about, and about synchronicity, which is, I'll talk about too in my third book. But I love to tell this story. You must know who Rupert Sheldrake is?
Hmm.
Yes, because he's a British biologist. And I was writing the section in my book about Rupert Sheldrake. And I come into the house. I had an office out back, and my husband says, "You're not going to believe it. We're having lunch with Rupert Sheldrake tomorrow." I mean, how did that happen? It turned
Mm.
out Rupert Sheldrake was at some conference in Scotland with some guy in his lab, and he said, "Next time you come to the United States, come to this computer science lab in Silicon Valley and give a talk." Well, it turned out like nobody knew who he was or wanted to listen to him talk, but we did. My husband said, "I'll pick him up from the train. I'll take him out to lunch. And my wife's coming too." So that's how that happened. And he actually did some coding experimental for one of his experiments too. So, so over time, I'm learning all these different therapies. And um, I decided after my second book came out to I'm really interested in all the energy bodies, and I realize, there's so much stuff out there, but nobody really understands. Everybody has like they do allopathy, which is conventional medicine, and maybe they do one other thing. Um, but how do you know what's the most appropriate thing or what it addresses, what part of you?
Mm.
So that eventually led to living in synchrony. It was a long time coming, because
Mm.
interrupted in the middle by COVID.
Mm.
But, originally I talk a lot in that book about Huna, which is this, a system on the energy bodies based on Hawaiian shamanism, which I found very helpful for me, and it fit with the Sarno's work. It fit with a lot of things. So, the way, this book is organized, as far as I know, it's the only book that does this. It the first part of the book, well, it describes our voyage. That's another part of our thing of how we left Silicon Valley, and but it discusses my own take on the cosmology. It's a common one of all the energy bodies from the physical, etheric. I call it the physical, etheric, astral, mental, causal,
Mhm.
and then the rest of the book is really a guide to healing based on like which part of this whole who we really are each of these therapies address, and how you can know where is the root of
Mm.
your problem, because as all the people probably who listen to your podcast know, most people just rush to the doctor and take something for the pain
Mm.
on the physical level to suppress the pain, which is in homeopathy a big no-no, to suppress pain.
Mm.
Sometimes you have to do it to survive, but um, you're just patching over what might be rooted somewhere else.
Mm.
And in fact, suppression can lead to deeper pain. So, or deeper issues.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
there's,
Can you share with the audience a little bit about your own pain experience? Because I know you talk about it in Living in Synchrony.
yeah. Well, I can talk about, for example, sciatica. I talk about that one. Uh,
Mm.
and this is actually a recurrent problem for me. It's a tendency I have. Um, I I mean, I had lower back pain too that led to Sarno. This was when I was in grad school. I was probably early 20s when that began. But, so, yeah, do you want me to talk about the sciatica or
Yeah, because you again in the book, I think if I remember right, when you left California, and you were traveling around the country trying to find a new place to live, right? You were kind of trying to, where do we belong?
Yeah.
What's our new place to live? Because you kind of realized California wasn't for you anymore, and you were suffering on the journey, if I remember right. Is that correct?
Um, not from pain. No, I wasn't.
Okay.
So, but, yeah, that was so exciting. I'll say briefly about that, because of my work on the my husband's work on the VAERS data, um, we were the first people to see the vaccine injuries from the COVID vaccine outside the CDC, and they didn't talk about it. So we weren't gonna get it, and Silicon Valley was the first place in the United States to shut down and, go into lockdown, and we lost all our friends basically after
Mm,
I lived there 45 years. I mean, they think they're still our friends, but they wouldn't have anything to do with us. We were shut out of things. We said, "We can't live here." And it made us realize how that place has changed. It's become a very unhappy, unpleasant place.
mm,
And then a friend of ours who's actually an MD and a PhD in computer science invited us. He wasn't afraid of us because he believed in the vaccine. So he invited us to come visit him up near Seattle. And it was our first trip out. It was the summer of 21. And the minute you left the San Francisco area, and especially after you got to California, it was like, whoa, it's not like it's a different world. It's like, and you realize we were living in some psychotic delusion. So, after that, we come back and we realize we gotta get out. And that was hard. We lived in our house for 40 years.
mm,
And that we weren't that young. So thank God, America is divided into 50 states with 50 different, really different gestalt you learn.
mm,
So, we drove the country for 7 months, living in hotels in our Prius and, with a roof box, and, we weren't gonna leave for any place unless we really liked it, and after all that, we landed in Greenville, South Carolina, which is this amazingly amazing city. It's a city that was in ruins, and it's going up. A lot of people are moving here, too many people, but it's, one of the few places in the United States that's in growth and happiness, and people are happy here and not in decline.
mm.
It's really a wonderful place.
Yeah.
So, so that's that story. So, okay. So I can talk about how about sciatica or
Yeah.
lower
Before
back pain?
before you before you get into that, which I do want you to talk about, just for the audience, just in case they're not familiar with the system. So the VAERS system in the US is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. So that's just to, it's just in case some people are like, what's VAERS? I don't know what VAERS is, but
Yeah.
that's just to clear that. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to talk about your sciatica experience, that'd be great.
And then also, I will say that this trip we took, it was more of a emotional pain I was going through.
Mm,
And a couple things really helped me through that because I mean, in a way, it took me a few years to get over that we had to leave our life and our home.
it's like a grieving process.
It was very difficult. At the same time, it was pretty exciting too. Um, okay. Well, yes, okay. At one point, I think this was the first really bad bout of sciatica, and I went to the osteopath. I had a great osteopath there. Nothing was working. Homeopathy wasn't working, and it was just getting worse and worse. And it got to the point where, um, like I had to first use a cane, and then the only relief I got was, like, sitting in a recliner. Um, it's like we moved a recliner into the bedroom. I was sleeping in the recliner, and the trouble was that we were supposed to go to us. My son lived in Australia at the time, and we were gonna go visit him in, like, just a few weeks, and how was I gonna do this trip?
Mm.
And, so as usual, whenever I had, like, pain, especially you see, I've learned from Sarno that it really covers way more than musculoskeletal pain.
Mm.
But whenever I have anything like that, I often just reread my first John Sarno book, which was Mind Over Back Pain. So I read the book, and it's only 100 pages,
Mm.
and I can talk. I We should talk about it. But and well, let me tell people. Have you ever talked about it on the podcast before?
I haven't mentioned John Sarno's work before on the podcast, but I'm sure I'm going to be mentioning it a lot from now
Yeah.
on.
So let me tell you a little bit about John Sarno,
Mm.
who's since passed, but he was a rehabilitative doctor in like some major hospital in New York City. This was his whole life, is treating various forms of musculoskeletal pain. And he realized that even after surgeries and all this stuff, the pain would recur. And he also read research that said um, that people who had, visible deformities, like slip disc or whatever, some people didn't have pain.
Mm.
So he realized it's not, he started realizing it wasn't really a physical, like, well, he had to come up with some explanation for it.
Mm.
How could this be? So he, he, he realized, he came up with this theory he calls TMS, tension myositis syndrome, which is that the real pain is coming from real physical pain is coming from the deprivation of blood to the tissues because you need blood. And, that goes into many physical therapies
Mm.
where you're not getting enough blood. And that even very subtle tension in the body can deprive blood, and then that causes pain because it's
Mm.
not getting enough oxygen. So, so So his method is first, because people who have had like long-standing pain, um, especially if it's in a specific part of the body, are sure it's like I did this or this injury, or the doctor said I have a slip disc or whatever. Um, it's impinging on my nerves. It's this. It's that. Um, it's hard to accept
Mm.
that it's not this physical deformity of some kind.
Mm.
So his first thing was to try to was to get people to accept this diagnosis, that it's not the deformity that's causing the pain. It's tension. Now, of course, where does the tension arise? And um, so, and it almost always arises through emotional impact of some kind, and su- usually suppressed anger the most. That's the
Mm.
most. And he calls people who tend to have these syndromes, and this is especially true of chronic pain. I mean, one of the natures of chronic pain is that it moves around, you know? And
If you've been living with chronic pain and feel as though you've tried everything, it may be because an important part of the picture has been overlooked. In my book, Beyond the Pain, I explore why persistent pain is not always explained by the place where it is felt. Structural and biomechanical factors matter, but so can nutrition, inflammation, sleep, stress, nervous system sensitivity, suppressed emotions, and the meaning your brain gives to what is happening. The book will help you look at your pain through a wider, whole person lens and begin identifying the influences that may be keeping it going. You can find Beyond the Pain in paperback and ebook through the links in the show notes.
he recommends, it's hard if you've been suppressing it, you don't want to admit it.
Mm.
He calls the people who tend to be like this, and I do tend to be like this, goodists.
Mm.
People who want to be good. They don't want to get angry, you
Yeah.
know? They don't wanna let it all out. They don't want they wanna be successful and nice and everything. So they have a and women especially try to be like this more than
Mm,
so, so he recommends if it doesn't go away I do this. I started and I did it while I was lying in my recliner. I spent I just writing nobody has to see it, writing down all the things you're upset about and you're mad about. And even better, saying it out loud because I can talk about this because the astral body, which is the emotional your emotional body, is your it's subconscious is part of it. It is very impressionable, it's irrational, and it's like that little child inside of you.
mm,
We all have it, and it's if you talk to it, it listens. So that's why saying things out loud, you're hearing it, I'm hearing what nobody should be there. It helps. I just started doing that. And one of the things I was upset about, one thing I realized, because in homeopathy, and I'll get into homeopathy a little, is that a big clue to picking the right remedy is what happened right before this began. It can lead to the right remedy. The homeopathy mostly addresses the energy body, but I mean the etheric body, but it can address the emotional body too. So right before I had completely forgotten about this, right when the pain began, I have a journal. I had this phone call with my son, the one I was going to visit, and I was upset by it, but I didn't. I suppressed it. I even forgot about it. So that was part of what I was writing down too. Yeah, I was upset about that phone call. I was upset. And so it started after about a day, it started going down. And then what really made it go away completely is I called my son and we talked about it. And then the pain was gone. And this had been going on, the pain had been going on for like 2 months.
mm,
So, and I just want to say, like, I have this list here that Sarno said he has treated using this kind of methodology. It's not just like I put in here, of course, musculoskeletal pain, nerve pain, tingling. I can tell you a story about nerve tingling, get into posture too. GERD, which I've also experienced, you know.
mm,
That was one of the things I talk about in the book. And it took me a long time to uncover why I had this GERD. Um, ulcers, hernia, hiatal hernia, which
mm,
I also tend to get. I'm very psychic for that. Uh, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, colitis, migraine headache, frequent urination. That's an interesting one. Can
mm,
be from stress. Prost- prostatitis, sexual dysfunction, tinnitus. Interestingly, tinnitus became a big problem. It was a side effect of the vaccine, and dizziness. So, like, these are just some of the problems he talks about. And you read in some of his other books, I think he talks about cancer too and everything.
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
but, um,
Eczema,
but
acne,
yes,
all sorts.
yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of the chronic problems people have are rooted, I believe, in the astral body, in the emotional body. It's hard for people to accept, but once you've been successful, um, uh, you
Yeah.
realize. So another thing I talk about is like this problem with GERD. It turned into chronic insomnia I had for a while, and I discovered the work of the Sedona method, which is another emotional release method. And it took me a while, but I conquered that too, because it was rooted in my case, in this issue with a friend. I was having guilt over this thing. So anyway, it's very deep. So I guess what I want to say is it's very important that, especially with chronic pain, that you find the root of it
Mm,
and not suppress it, because it's just going to migrate somewhere else or something else. And that's what this book is about, helping you find the root.
yeah,
And then what are the various treatments that can address that root? Um,
yeah.
so, where should we go next?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because going back about more than 20 years ago, I studied the body talk system. I don't know if you're familiar with body
Yeah, I've
talk.
heard of it. Yes.
Um, and so it's a form of energy medicine. And sometimes I'd get people coming to me and they wouldn't actually say what was wrong with them because they thought I was a charlatan and they were trying to catch me out. And
Really?
yeah, and then I would do a session on them and they would look at me like, what did you just do? My pain, all my pain has gone, you know. And and then I've studied the emotion code and the body code. And so I've seen from myself how emotions can cause pain. Um, but when I finished my training at the Czech Institute, and I've told this story a million times on this podcast, but I want to share it with you. I worked with a lady that had left shoulder arm pain, left lower back pain, which she said was caused by the back pain was a fall. She fell on a sharp object. The arm pain was she fell off a mountain bike. In her mid-20s, these incidents happened. And when she came to me, I think she was 50 or 52. And to cut a long story short, I quickly kind of analyzed all her paperwork and I just said to her, what's your relationship like with your mother? Right. And she she was a very calm, very polite, quiet kind of person. And when I asked that question, she was like a firework going off. Right.
Ugh.
And I thought, oh, okay, I might have hit the jackpot here. And she was basically saying, look, I didn't feel loved by my mother growing up. We don't get on. We haven't spoken for 10 years. And I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And so I coached her over a few days in nonviolent communication. And I suggested that when she went back home, she reached out to her mother that she hadn't spoken to for 10 years and expressed how she felt as a child and how she would have liked to have been treated and how she would have liked to have felt. Um, and again, cut a very long story short, 6 months later, I get a letter from this lady saying, not only is my pain gone, but my relationship with my mum is great. We see each other every day and we're getting on like a house on fire.
Wow.
Right. So reading John Sarno's work is like, oh, okay. So she probably had some repressed anger going on there. Right. And it was only from my training at the Czech Institute, understanding what information you can gather from the chakras and the parts of the body that are in pain. So I'm thinking, okay, tribal association, communication, left side of the body, female. I just thought maybe there's something with her and her mother. And then as soon as I asked the question, it just all came flooding out. Right.
Yeah.
So, I didn't really need to be sold by what John Sarno is suggesting. I get it. I get it. Um, but yeah, I found his work really, really interesting. And I'm going to delve a bit deeper as well into his work. But what I loved in your book, so again, in my Czech training, I learned about all the different, the physical body and all the different energy bodies. But I think you explained, the physical body, the etheric body, the astral body, the mental body, and the causal body so well. Probably the best explanation I've come across. For the audience, can you explain what each of those are?
Okay. Well, most of us are familiar with the physical body.
Mm,
And interestingly, many alternative therapies, in my view, are addressing the physical body. So herbalism is addressing, they're just addressing the physical body in a different way than
mm,
conventional medicine. So so in my cosmology, let's call it, herbalism is a physical body treatment. So so things that are operating on the physical level, not on the energy level. A lot of alternative therapies are doing both, like,
Mm.
let's say, uh, chiropractic or whatever, they acknowledge the energy bodies, but where are they primarily focused? So, so the physical body. The etheric body is the part of us, um, like homeopaths call it the vital force. Um, it is you might think of it as it's not just electromagnetic, but it's an electromagnetic like energy. That's actually what's directing and animating our physical body. So, and, in my second book, I talk a lot about Rudolf Steiner. He was a big influence on me too,
Mm.
the cosmology of this, but like I said, this Huna cosmology also. And, so, and Steiner said that, you know, and also Gurdjieff, that after your physical body dies, your energy body's still around for a little while. Um, so the energy body, the etheric body is very tied to to the physical body, and the physical body needs the energy body uh, to survive. Uh,
Mm.
can't live without it. And it is often that's why um, medicines like homeopathy, acupuncture, they're primarily addressing the energy body, the etheric body, uh, can cause huge effects on the physical body because they're totally interconnected.
Mm.
And that's like people are like, how can homeopathy work? It's diluted to the point of no molecules. Yeah, it's not really a physical medicine. A lot of homeopaths are getting into the nano explanation, but there's a lot of evidence that it can't be working that way. For example, they've been able to record, uh, electronically, uh, uh, the energy in a homeopathic dilution and send it over email and then put it back into some water. It still works. Okay.
Wow.
So it's not strictly a physical thing. It's an energy thing. So, and as the etheric body is the interface really between the physical body and all the higher energy bodies. And according to my cosmology, when you die, your etheric body dissipates, but your other bodies continue on. That's like your soul, you might say. It's part of you that goes in, that gets probably reincarnated later. So your astral, mental, and causal body um, continue on and go into a different, what I would say is the astral world primarily. So you become this unit in the astral world that continues on. And that's like we talked about a great book called Journey of Souls. I recommend everybody read that.
Mm.
But so that might be our true home.
Mm.
I talk about why are we doing this? Where we decide while we're astral beings to reincarnate into a physical body because it's a huge a place where we learn and evolve these parts of us. So, okay, so I might briefly say that I have several therapies for each one, but in addition to allopathy, I'll go back to the physical body, there's herbalism, there's massage, there's posture, super important. I talk about
Mm-hmm.
my posture journey. That's another story I could tell. Uh, the way we hold our bodies has become worse and worse in the modern world. So we're restricting all kinds of things because our posture is terrible.
Mm.
We're not getting oxygen. The Alexander method, same thing, and that causes a lot of pain, back pain, especially neck pain. Um, I discovered posture therapy because I was having tingling on the right side of my body. And I thought I had, oh my God, I've got MS. I didn't know what it was. And over a long journey, it turned out to be my neck posture. So that's another story that's in this book. There's also osteopathy, chiropractic. Um, then we go up into the etheric body. That's homeopathy, acupuncture. Those are the two biggest ones. Um, and
Reiki probably works at that level, doesn't it?
what? Reiki,
Reiki.
Reiki, um, Reiki, like these hands-on healing methods. Um, which also I learned. I learned. I got a Reiki attunement.
Yeah, any
Um,
form of chakra healing as well is probably in that.
yes, yes. Chakra healing. Um, the Barbara Brennan work. There's so much. I'm sure this body talk thing. Well, I don't know. I don't know it about it. Um, okay. So now let's go up into the higher bodies. So we got astral, mental, causal. Astral is like so critical. I mean, for me, it's the biggie. So this is where we get John Sarno. We get the Sedona method, which is what helped me with my insomnia and the GERD and everything. So I'll explain the Sedona method. This guy, Hale Dwoskin, is the person who teaches it now. He's online. Just to go to Sedona method. I don't know if it's .org or .com. I listen to, I look at that almost every day. I have these releases. So what he talks about is, that we hold these things and we just need to release them. And then his book, it's worth reading and going through this book, because our various issues usually boil down to the desire for safety. Okay, what are they? Safety, control, oneness, separation. Maybe there's one more. Anyway, and so you learn to go down and down, and you can doing this work and self-examination can go very deep, back to childhood, like this case of your woman,
Mm.
because she had to. So it's like a very simple method, really, to release these emotions. But there's other methods too. So there's one called core transformation. I've kind of gotten into it lately, and I use it when I have pain or anything like it, an issue. I go, okay. The idea of that, similar to the Sedona method, and to Sarno too, is that okay, anything you experience is your astral body usually trying to talk to you. It's trying to help you.
Mm.
It's trying to help you. So if you meditate and you talk to this part of yourself, which often feels like a young part of yourself, a fearful young part of yourself or whatever, you say, thank you for this. What are you trying to tell me? What do you want? What is it that you actually want? What? So I have this pain in my knee. What are you trying to tell me? What do you want? And then if you figure out what you want, then you say, okay, it might be, I want this person to stop bothering me or whatever. So then you say, okay, if you have that, what do you want then? So you kind of go deeper and deeper and
Mm.
deeper till you get to usually to what they call a core state, which is like peace or freedom or, something like that. And then if you can experience that state, you can actually bring it up at other times. I found it very helpful to find like what is really why is this thing really bothering me? I really, so and another one that's a little bit more on the physical is called it's the shaking method. Uh okay, I'm forgetting what it's called, but I do it a lot. Uh so oh, TRE, trauma release exercises. So it's sort of a
Mm.
physical method to get to the astral. So there's that. EMDR is another one,
Mm-hmm.
with eye movements.
Yeah.
um, and the tapping.
Eye movement, disassociation, reactivation, I think it is.
Yeah. Uh, Eye movement, yeah, desensitization, yeah, and then there's
Oh,
EF
reintegration, maybe. I can't
integration,
remember.
and then there's EFT, emo
Yes.
emotional freedom technique.
Yeah.
In those cases, you're like EFT, you're tapping on various acupuncture points, really, and then that was amazing. That was I was having problems with dizziness, that cures it to menopausal dizziness, um, so there's a lot of, like, kind of physical things, but they're really addressing the astral body. Uh,
Mm.
uh, so, yeah, the shaking thing, trauma release exercises, that's what helped get me through what happened to us during COVID. I was really traumatized, being dissed by my friends,
Mm.
rejected, forced out of my home where I thought I'd die. I mean, this was really traumatic simply because I wouldn't take that fucking thing, sorry. And thank God I didn't. And
Yeah, I was in a similar situation back then, but I was really aware that I was angry and frustrated.
yeah,
I knew I was, so I was, at least I wasn't suppressing it, right?
yes, I
You
knew
know,
I was angry, but it really was so to release that trauma. So at the time, before we left California, I found a TRE person who I could work with online, and she wasn't judging me because I know somebody who is a psychotherapist who was working with her psychotherapist, and that psychotherapist, after 5 years of working with her, dumped her because she wouldn't take the vaccine. Even online, working online. That talk about trauma, your
yeah,
therapist anyway, this woman didn't do it. So the idea behind TRE, it was developed by some guy who observed animals in the
well,
wild.
yeah. Well, mammals do that, don't they?
Yes, that
Yeah.
when after like a lion attack or something, they like a zebra will go into the bush and like shake violently, and then they're calm.
Mm.
The idea is that
Resets their parasympathetic nervous system.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So these appointments, uh, I would tell her what was going on, and I'd be upset, and then you just lie down on the floor and you kind of get into a certain posture and you just you sort of initiate it and then you just let it all out. It's sort of like primal therapy,
Mm.
uh, and you really do. You kind of get riled up for like half an hour, but then you
It's
feel
kind
much.
of similar to ecstatic dance as well. It's kind of
Yes,
similar.
yes, ecstatic dance does the same thing. You're kind of shaking, it's like they call it shaking. You're shaking the trauma out of your body, and that's another way sometimes for me to figure out what is really bothering me when it's subconscious, right?
Mm.
And I'll realize through this process uh, that this is what's bothering me. So so then we could go deeper into the mental body.
Hmm.
So the mental body. And by the way, there's correlates in your physical at a lower level. Like, obviously your emotional, you feel your emotions through chemicals or whatever. You have your thought and reasoning process. The brain is part of it, but not as much as people think.
Well, your emotions can affect your posture too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, so the mental body, this is the higher energy body that continues on, is the part of you that um is rational, you know? Is where you do all your thinking and planning and calculating and stuff like that, and some people, for example, are very good at their mental body, like your math professor, but be terrible in their emotional and physical body, right?
Mm.
They're focused on one body, but good to be good in all the bodies, and, so the mental body but your emotional body, according to this cosmology, doesn't have any rational abilities. This is why it's so impressionable, because it's like a kid. Like they say, up until you're like 8, 7, 8, 9, your mental body isn't really functioning that well yet.
Mm.
So, like, you're very in your emotional body, uh, and then suddenly you can see a kid, suddenly they become much more focused and they get fixated on, like, collecting things or being good at school. It's like the mental body is becoming the dominant force, and it's the boss now of your emotional body. This is why, as adults, we suppress our emotions.
Mm.
They're like, "I gotta go to work, beat my blah, blah, blah. I can't, like, get mad at people, I can't." So, of course, some people have their emotions are in control, and they won't listen to their rational body. But most of us suppress these emotions because our mental body, because or at least we believe that the mental body wants us to do these things. So, anyway, now there's less therapies on the mental body side as we go up. Um, um, but a part of the mental body is your will. Is the will. It's like, and um, I talk about Viktor Frankl, who was, talked about the Holocaust. He survived the Holocaust in the concentration camps, and he noticed that the people who tended to survive were the people who still had a will, a reason to survive.
Mm.
And at the minute, like, people lost their will, they would die. They had given up.
You
So,
know, there's a famous saying by a guy called Jerry Wesh: "If you have a big enough dream, you don't need a crisis."
right, right. Or where there's a will, there's a way.
Mm.
Uh, and it's you can overcome a lot with will, because the mental part of you is not just the rational part, it's the part that's also receiving, like, information. Um, so scientists, musicians, uh, artists, or anybody, you're receiving information from the mental plane, this mental sphere,
Mm.
and and it keeps you going. It's like if that's blocked, you can feel hopeless.
It's interesting you say that because sometimes I'll write a poem and I don't feel like I'm writing it. I feel like it's someone
Right,
else is writing it through me,
right.
and it's probably coming in from that mental body.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, that's most creative people say. It's not coming through a rational, like, calculating thought process. It's just you're receiving the information. You can receive into the astral body too, but like the mental body is where these kind of creative ideas are coming from. And so 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 like going back to Viktor Frankl, he came up with this thing called logotherapy. So what is logo? Logos is it's related to reason. Um, so and which was basically to have people find their purpose in life.
Mm.
Help people. It's a type of psychotherapy based uh, on that. Another one that I actually used as well is called logosynthesis, and this work of this guy Willem Lammers in, I think, in Holland or Switzerland. It's somewhere in Europe.
Sounds German.
It's yeah, and he so the other part of the mental body is that it's like words, things that are like conceptual word things. So this is a therapy simply on saying words. certain words. Obviously, when you say these words out loud, you're talking to your astral body too, because the astral body is listening and obeying the mental body. So, and I do this too. I use this especially when we were driving the country. I use TRE and the logotherapy to help me calm down, go to sleep because of this huge thing we were going through. And there's these certain formulas, they're in the book, that you can say, um, that I view as a mental body therapy. So, because I'm not really delving, I sort of think, oh, if I figure out, oh, this bothered me, and I just do these formulas, I release it. Uh, so, let's say you have pain and you figure out, okay, it's coming from this emotional thing, or even this pain. I'll do the logotherapy. I mean, the logo synthesis sentences based on my knee is hurt, the knee pain. Even that can release it because then the mental body is talking. You have to say it out loud to the other parts of you, and can help release it. Um, so so that now let's get into the final body, and there may be more bodies. The causal body.
If your pain keeps returning, moves from one part of your body to another, or has failed to respond to the treatments you've tried, you may need someone to look beyond the painful area. In my consultations, I take a whole person approach, exploring the potential structural, nutritional, physiological, nervous system, lifestyle, and emotional influences contributing to your symptoms. The aim is not to simply suppress your pain. It is to help you uncover why your system may be producing it and create an individualized plan that helps you participate in your own recovery. If that sounds like the kind of support you've been looking for, you can find out more and schedule a discovery call using the consultation link in the show notes.
So it's called the causal body because it's it, it's the creative force. It causes things.
Mm.
So so this is like people call the high self. Most people aren't connected to it very much, and but it's always there. You could view it as the Holy Spirit. It's your connection to God, and it's the part of you that can manifest. Um, so so that was my second book. I was very interested in manifestation and all that work of. I mean, there's just so much on manifestation. The problem is with manifestation, you can use all these techniques, but if your astral body and your mental body don't want to manifest what it is, including healing, then it's going to be not going to work.
Mm.
So that's why I say you got to work on these lower parts first, because you can, do this manifestation process like uh I'm very into manifestation. Like, I into the work of Ernest Holmes and all these things to manifest things in life by visualizing what you want, um, belief, all this stuff. But if there's this subconscious part of you that doesn't want to manifest it, which is usually true because you're invested in your pain. It's
Mm.
getting good things for you. You don't have to work, whatever it is. Then it's hard to manifest that kind of healing.
Mm.
So, so I talk about, sort of the basic manifestation techniques, which was a big focus of my second book. So,
Yeah, I will get round to reading your other books at some point.
yeah. Thank,
Definitely will.
yeah.
So, so that's you got the physical body, you got the energy bodies. Now, when most people are in pain, they just assume it's a physical thing, right? From your perspective, what and where is the actual root of pain?
Well, I think it's different,
Mm.
if you've broken your leg, obviously, uh, you gotta deal with it, physically, but interestingly, like, homeopathy can help it heal faster, your emotional attitude will affect your recovery, um, all like that, so, I suggest that I have various, at the beginning of each of these chapters on the bodies and their therapies, I have various kind of hints or suggestions. In computers, we call them heuristics, uh, sort of guidelines uh, to suggest that it might be in that body.
Mm.
Okay, so even if it is a physical thing, you might start at the physical. Um, um, if there really was like some causative thing, if it, if if it's really physical, then usually doing a physical thing will alleviate it,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Like so but so well, I can't even remember what I said the hints were on the physical the physical body, but
One example would be physical if it was a
right, right,
uh, postural distortion which was restricting blood flow to a certain area,
right.
that
And
in itself could potentially
sometimes
cause pain.
it's hard to find it out. And this is a good time to talk about that tingling on the right side of my body, which was pretty scary. So the first thing I did go to my doctor, which I avoid doctors, but I was scared, and she said, "You don't have MS." Then I went to the osteopath, and he said, "It's your jaw," which I don't, I have a bad jaw. And he said, "Go to this TMJ doctor, what's it called? The temporal mandibular joint disorder."
Hmm.
Luckily, this guy was good. He says, "I could make you an appliance, but your real problem is that I was a lifelong mouth breather and tongue thruster." So, okay, I was already at that point like 60 years old. And he said, "You need to go to this orofacial myalgia, orofacial therapist."
Hmm.
So I did that for like 6 months, and you learn to, like, start using mouth tape. This is a big people are starting to be aware of this now. A lot of people have problems, especially children,
Mm.
with breathing and all like that. So I learned to be a nose breather. The tongue thrust is harder, which just means you're swallowing improperly, like your tongue's going forward instead of backwards. Um, Most of her patients were like 8 years old, and I was there in the office, 60 years old. But, and it affects the shape of your face, your teeth, the
Mm.
structure, and all this stuff. So she says, "Now you gotta do something about your neck posture, because after a lifelong thing, in order to breathe, you
Mm.
gotta go like this, forward
Yeah.
neck." And so then she said, "Go to posture therapy." So then I went to this Esther Gokley, this brilliant system, which just happened to be based where I lived, but it's international. And you can learn do stuff online now too. And I went to her 6 lessons, life transforming, life transforming. And my son too, he was starting to have shoulder and back pain from sitting in the chair all day. With the way people are looking down at their phones all day,
Mm.
that's horrible for your neck,
Yeah.
It, and what's sad is that people have such bad posture now that they've changed the structure of car seats and chairs to accommodate bad posture. And the way Esther Gokli came up with this therapy is she would go to indigenous cultures and observe how they stood and sat and slept and moved and did all this and went, oh my God, where like the modern man is like total. In fact, like our spinal shape, the average spinal shape has changed from the 1800s to
Mm.
the 1900s. Uh, just go sit in a cafe and watch how people are like this.
Well,
Then
I've seen postures change in the last 25 years. You know, and
this probably, the phone.
yeah, and I think just generally people are sitting longer. I think yes, the phones, but um, so there's something called upper cross syndrome, which is where you're kind of hunched, your head's forward. I've pretty much always seen that over the last 25 years, but it's probably just getting more extreme. But it's even in the lower body, I'm seeing a shift. So initially, I used to see more people with what's called a lower cross syndrome, which is where the pelvis tilts forward. When I say more, not it wasn't in the majority, but I was seeing a lot more of them then than I do now. I don't see very many at all, less than 10% of people now. What I do see is people with the opposite, with the posteriorly rotated pelvis and a flat lumbar spine. And
Hmm.
again, I think it's got to be from extended time sitting.
What Esther Gokli says is it's very counterintuitive to what people think. You're not supposed to tuck your butt. Your butt should be behind you. You
Mm.
might tuck your rib cage. Anyway, and interestingly, her main book, was it 7 Steps to a Pain-Free Back or something like that. And her name is spelled Gokhale. Gokhale. Anyway, she who wrote the foreword to that book? My doctor, the first person
Oh wow.
that I went to. I should have gone to her right from the beginning, but I did
Mm.
to correct my breathing and stuff. So there was a voyage completely on the physical level, and it's helped my husband. It's helped our whole family. You know, um, whenever I start feeling any kind of like neck, like tingling or neck pain, I just I remember about my posture. So um not that I'm perfect, but this is like accumulate all these tools. People must.
Mm.
I'm just like a totally screwed up person, but after the past
It all
30
happen. It all
years,
happens. It all happens for a reason, right?
I've learned all these things. That's why I wrote the book. I'm going to share it with all of you. And there's a
Mm.
lot more out there. These are the ones I know about, right?
Mm.
So, okay, so up
So that was the
phys-
physical.
physical, um, and of course massage and other things. So, where were we? So,
Yeah, we
oh,
were
like
talking
the
about
signs. Okay, etheric body, the etheric body. Um, well, if the physical doesn't work, time to look elsewhere, right?
hmm
And I would say that chronic disease, you should start looking at the etheric body. So things like eczema, things that just don't go away. In,
Mm.
in, in homeopathy, we call chronic disease, acute disease is things that will just resolve, usually a cold, the flu. You can do, normal physical things to heal it. But then, um, when it's chronic disease, arthritis, um, just, things that doctors can only suppress. If you go to, let's say, the chiropractor and he says you got to come every week for the rest of your life, well, yeah, it might alleviate it temporarily, but like, is there something deeper that I can do here
Yeah.
on the energy level that will actually cure this? And homeopaths, a good, I do, classical homeopathy, one remedy at a time. An experienced, good homeopath, because there's a lot of crap going on out there, will can change the energetic, the energy in your body to correct the problem on the physical level in ways that you won't believe, really. Um, so things like asthma, chronic disease can be cured with homeopathy. It's not easy. And interestingly, a lot of times these things are caused by physical suppression. So let's say a common pathway, for example, for asthma, which you might consider a type of pain, actually, is, kid has allergies. No, kid has eczema. Baby has eczema, often caused by vaccines and stuff. The body will usually express the most superficial way first, and then if you suppress it, you
Mm.
suppress the eczema, it will go deeper. Then the next path thing is that the kid gets allergies. Then you give allergy medicine, allergy shots, whatever. Next thing, asthma. Now, doctors will say this is a common pathway of disease, but they don't know why.
Mm.
They've suppressed themselves into a very deep disease that's much more dangerous than eczema, let's say. So what will happen in homeopathic treatment, you might treat the asthma starts improving, and then now you have allergies again. You work on the allergies, then you get eczema. The body is like, there's a sort of thing called the law of cure, which is from the in to the out. And what's the innermost? It's often the emotional
Mm.
thing. Or like a psychosis is, for example, a very deep internal disease. If you could actually work on the site in the mental disease, it can start manifesting physically because that's less dangerous, let's say.
Mm.
Um, uh, so, um,
Yeah,
so
what you're alluding to is something that I've thought for a long time, is that pain, or you could say any symptom, is trying to tell you something. You could say it's your subconscious trying to make your conscious aware of something. And if you suppress it, as you said, it's going deeper, right? So it's going to cause a bigger problem. You know, it's interesting. I've helped quite a few people over the years that have been suffering from acne. It's something that I had for 18 years myself, which I took antibiotics and put loads of toxic nonsense on my skin, which didn't help and probably made me a lot worse. And what I try and get across to people with acne, they find it difficult to understand what I'm saying. You can use things like Accutane, and you can do other things that might suppress it, and you think, oh, that's great, and I can understand why you'd think that. But if you're continuing to put the things in your body, or whatever's caused the acne in the first place, but you're suppressing the symptoms, now that's starting to deal with something or build up something that could potentially become life-threatening in 10, 20, 30, 40 years' time. And you think you've dealt with a problem, but you haven't. You've just pushed it under the water. And, it might be your body's trying to tell you that you need to detoxify, or it might be trying to tell you that those contraceptive pills that you're taking probably aren't doing you a lot of good, right? But if you take another, let's say it's Accutane for your skin, you think, oh, the skin's gone, you continue messing with your hormones, you might get to 40 and find you've got breast cancer. Rather than, okay, what's causing the acne? Let's deal with the root cause of the acne in the first place.
all you have to do is, I don't know what you have in UK, but in the United States, we still have these horrible, ads for drugs on the TV.
Mm.
And like Accutane's a perfect example. So they'll have a happy person dancing around, no more acne, blah, blah, blah. And then very quietly at the bottom of the screen, oh, and this might cause blah, 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 like, death, liver failure, psychosis.
Suicide. Suicide.
Yeah, suicide. And that's a common thing with Accutane, all
Mm-hmm.
this uh, teenage suicide. You know what? Most people have acne when they're teenagers. It's your body, it's puberty.
Well, you know what's interesting? If you go and study hunter gatherers, their teenagers don't have acne.
Hmm.
So it's a
Diet.
combination of hormones, diet, and environment. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and sadly, the over-vaccination, what's
mm,
going on of the kids.
yeah.
Over-vaccination
Well,
is
I remember at the time
huge.
around the time my acne started, I actually had BCG vaccine.
Ah, yeah, yeah. Look, so that's another clue.
Mm,
What happened right before? So into the emotional body, what happened? Did you have a breakup, you lose your job, upsetting situation? You know, might forgot. Go back and
mm,
remember what happened right before this problem began. If it was a stress event, go to the emotional body, you know?
mm, yeah,
That's so important.
yeah. So you've discussed root cause in terms of physical, etheric. Did you go through the astral? Can't remember now.
That's like I just said, like
Yeah.
what happened right before, um, if it's wandering, chronic pain often wanders. If it's not, if it's like first my neck hurts, then my back hurts, then this, then that. And Sarno calls it the symptom imperative. And he warns you about that.
Mm,
He says, okay, you use you deal with whatever the emotional thing was, but your astral body, it wants attention. It is like trying to, so if you tend to be, most of us do, but if you tend to have this pattern, you'll solve one problem, up pops the next one
mm,
because it's still talking to you. And he calls it the symptom imperative. So it could be one pain moving to another pain, um, or something else. Now you have digestive problems. Now you have this, like that GERD, which I dealt with using a diet thing, whatever, turned into chronic insomnia because I wasn't looking what was really bothering me. Um, which is, it's a horrible thing, not sleeping.
mm.
Uh, so,
I'm just a bit aware of time, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit.
yeah.
So, um, your book is a kind of a map helping people consider which therapies may relate to which part of the self. How can someone start matching the likely root of their pain with the most appropriate type of support?
Well, like each of these chapters has sort of hints. This is what we've been sort of discussing about if the nature of this problem is like has these qualities. So I don't say if you have this, do this
Mm,
because every person is different. It might be a physical problem. It might be an emotional problem. So it's more like I have these are guidelines. There's guidelines that it's there in this area, guidelines that it's not in that area. Um, and so there's that. Um, and um, also, you might start from the physical up, but often you can use these hints to go right to where the root is.
mm,
Certainly, if what you're doing isn't working, you got to look elsewhere, and you have to really want to work on it.
mm,
Which in this day and age, people are getting lazy. A pill for every ill, right? So, but if you've really been suffering, you should you want to. Most people or a lot of people will want to work on it and not just accommodate to it. Um, so it does take work. Uh,
mm,
I want to stress something else since we're running out of
mm,
time. One of the reasons, it was after the COVID journey and my realizations because of that, because I wrote most of this book before COVID, like a first draft, and then we were completely derailed because it took like a good 2, 3 years to get back to this book. And by that point, I realized the like a fundamental problem is that we are, if we, this roots back to Silicon Valley. If we merge with technology, which is what's happening, believe me, people don't realize what's going on there. I've been seeing it for 20, 30 years. The transhumanist agenda, which means to merge humans with computers or machines and to genetically engineer our bodies. I believe that this will sever our connection to these higher energy bodies and render us more or less completely physical beings, like robotic physical beings. We will lose our healing abilities. So this is what the subtitle of this book is: A Guide to Healing, backwards, the healing and reclaiming our powerful natural humanity. Because
Mm,
as natural human beings, we have access to all these energy bodies. And we have to stay natural human beings. We have so much more power than we realize. We aren't robotic physical beings. We're
mm,
not just like, we have this power. We don't want to lose it. And we can get more, conspiracy-like about it, but, part of the agenda may be to sever our connection to these things. Like, for example, EMFs, that is screwing with our etheric body,
mm,
you know? It is, so, will we even have access anymore if we're so to our emotional self, if we're just popping pills, get absorbed in social media? We're like cutting ourselves off from our own wisdom and healing power. And
mm,
I'm really worried, especially about children who are growing up in this world where they're just not connected to who they really are. They're
mm,
trapped. And I think on that interview I do with Doc Malik, he read a quote by Rudolf Steiner, like written 100 years ago, saying this
mm,
is going to happen to us. It's amazing.
mm.
So this was the other kind of underlying thread to the book. Stay like as much as you can. It's hard these days. A natural human being connected to all these parts of you, if you want to heal.
Mm.
You
Yeah, it's really important, and it's ironic that we're having this conversation on the day that Charlie Boy, otherwise known as the King, announced that he's passed the law for digital ID in the UK. And as I was saying before we started recording, I'm not going along with it, whatever that means for me. I'm just not doing it. And
Yeah.
sadly, I think most of the people in this country will go along with it because they've got mortgages to pay and they've got mouths to feed. But I'm not. I'm not taking any part in it.
Well, just I would say, as long as you can still use cash, that's a very important thing.
Mm,
I'm trying to use cash as much as possible, but sadly, with the digital ID, you're also starting to be trapped into digital money only,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and then you've lost complete control over your movement.
Yeah, it's a digital prison, isn't it? That's what it is. In reality, it's a digital prison.
Yeah, so, Catherine Austin Fitts is this American who talks a lot about this. Uh,
Mm,
but this is why, like, this book is even more important now to make people wake up, because let's try to hold on to who we are.
mm, yeah,
You-
yeah. So just to kind of wrap up, for someone who's in chronic pain, they feel disconnected from their body, their intuition, or their sense of meaning. What would be a gentle first step towards living more in synchrony?
Well, I would start possibly meditating, and making time, even if it's just for 10 minutes a day, to settle in to who you are. Because if you're just otherwise, you're not gonna have any intuition or connection to what's going on.
Mm,
You might like even just getting a massage or something that relaxes you, nature, get out in nature, music, talking to people, getting off the phone, start trying to connect to these other parts of yourself. And even something as simple as like going to a homeopath, or an acupuncturist, um, will start opening up. I mean, certainly my son getting cured with homeopathy changed my perspective of reality. And once that starts to happen, once you have some help from something that's supposedly impossible, it starts opening you up and going, wait a minute, there's other possibilities out there.
Mm.
So, no.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a good place to start for most people. And Amy, what's next for you?
What's next? Everybody asks. I'm trying to get the word out about my book, and I'm trying to accept that I'm in my 70s now. And I write. I also, if people go to my website, amylansky.com, I also write articles about society. I'm I'm really exploring. I'm not exactly sure what's next. I feel like these 3 books I've written are sort of a trilogy, and they're my contribution, and I'd like to get back to painting and art and music and relaxing a bit,
Mm.
and trying to not get sucked into, um to try to have to manifest hope. I wrote an article recently called "The Grand Plan," because I feel people are, like, so embroiled in little bullshit, like, what's going on at a low level detail, and to focus on a larger positive vision of the future, and with trust, because I think the world is working in very mysterious ways right now, and try to not get sucked into little anger over small things, because that's not good for you either.
Mm.
And, you know, so that's, I don't have a huge next project other uh, than that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. It's good not to have projects. You can be like me and have one after the other, after the other, after the other, and it doesn't stop. But
I
that's
live
good.
my
That's good as well.
I lived my whole life like that.
Mm.
And now I must say, turning 70 is creating a shift. I want to be more like the wise elder and not the super achiever, which I've
Mm.
been my whole life, right? So here I
Mo-
am. That's what I'm trying to teach you guys. That's
More,
why I'm here.
more being and less doing.
Yeah, more being, less doing. It's hard for me. That's not my natural state. So,
Awesome. Awesome. So for the audience, check out amylansky.com. Definitely check out Amy's books. I've read Living in Synchrony. It's an amazing book, really well written, really easy to read as well. But Amy, thank you for your time today. I really enjoyed
so,
chatting with you.
thank you.
It's been really enjoyable.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that's it from Amy and me for this week. But be sure to tune in, same time, same place next week on Beyond the Pain. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Pain. If this episode resonated, please follow the show, leave a review, or share it with someone you know who's been struggling. And remember, pain is not permanent. With the right insight and support, you can turn it into power. Until next time, stay open, stay strong, and keep moving beyond the pain.